What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Paul Heyman Smackdown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel. I'm your host, as always, Callum Wiggins, and joining me on this journey back in time is Robert DeFelice.
Happy Halloween, Callum. What's going on? What are you dressed as?
I'm currently dressed as a guy who doesn't like to go outside.
Oh man, me too. Same thing.
Yeah, it's happy Halloween to everyone who is observing it. Hopefully, you're observing it in a COVID-friendly way, but let's face it, you're probably not. But it's all right. I heard that COVID takes Halloween off, so I think we're fine, really.
That's good. That's good. Good to know. Good for the kids.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, hopefully you are celebrating it in any way that you possibly can. We have a special edition, Halloween edition of SmackDown to review here. But first of all, I would like to invite everybody to, if you're watching us on YouTube, drop a comment below. Let us know. Let us know what you think about this episode, what you think about the podcast in general, what you're doing for Halloween, or how you enjoyed Halloween. If you're watching this after the fact, just all of that great stuff. If you aren't listening through YouTube and listening through any of the podcast feeds, then just drop a rating or a review on those. There is a link in the description if you haven't checked out this episode of SmackDown already, and I definitely encourage you to do so. So check out the link in there to the WWE Network's version of this episode. And of course, there is a playlist in the YouTube channel as well. So if you want to go back to the very beginning and watch all the episodes of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast from the start till now, then definitely do so, because it definitely helps us out. Okay, as per usual, we'll kick off with some news. I think the biggest story in terms of what's happening at this moment in time and will be a bit of an influence moving forward, at least more on the Raw side of things, is Scott Steiner was signed by WWE on October 22nd.
Wow, they wasted no time getting him on TV.
No, absolutely. So Scott Steiner, apparently his contract, according to the Observer at the time, was brought in on a maximum 14 days per month schedule, which was similar to what the Undertaker was on at the time. So he wasn't there to be super full term on the road constantly, like a lot
He
of the
never
other
does WrestleMania. That just clicked. He never has a match at a WrestleMania, does he?
Not in this run, at the very least, no.
That's terrible.
Well, yeah, I guess that this is a period of time where WrestleManias you kind of had to be in a top storyline or a bit of a big deal. Like there was no interpromotional battle royale at the start of it yet, so he couldn't even fit in on any of those capacities, even though he was the guy challenging for the world championship on the two pay-per-views prior to WrestleMania.
That's pretty intense. I'm quite surprised.
But yeah, Scott Steiner's running WWE, his second run as a singles guy. What are your overall thoughts of that run?
Well, as I just said, surprising to me that they didn't do more with him. I understand that the matches against Triple H are god awful, but I still think that there's equity in the Scott Steiner brand, and I think that they didn't do nearly enough.
Well, part of the reason why the Steiner experiment didn't work is basically explained in the newsletter with the fact that the last major wrestling Steiner had done over the summer was working a few big shows for New Japan. But apparently, despite the fact that he was working with some of the company's best workers like Tenzan and Hiroshi Tanahashi, he had a lot of bad matches because he's essentially working on one leg at the moment due to a clubfoot injury, which basically hampered his starting run, and it's part of the reason why that match with Triple H at Royal Rumble is so bad. It's because he got blown up so quickly because he wasn't in ring shape.
That's a shame. Because his TNA stuff that would come later is pretty decent, all things considered. So I wish they would have given him more of a look or more of an opportunity.
So yeah, he doesn't get too much of a look in WWE. Obviously, a major part of the storyline for them moving forward is the fact that now he's part of a bidding war between Raw and SmackDown, which they do allude to on this episode of SmackDown. The fact that Michael Cole says at some point that Scott Steiner has been signed to the company. I think they were running a few vignettes, but for some reason they don't include those vignettes on the WWE Network.
They were definitely running vignettes because he was doing a lot of I don't know, on SmackDown there's Brock Lesnar, on Raw there's Triple H. I'll be honest, when I was a kid, I remember thinking Steiner Lesnar sounds like more of a match I could see than Steiner Triple H. And I think, all things considered, Steiner Lesnar might have played better too.
It could hardly have played worse. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So we should also talk a little bit about Rebellion, because even though we decided not to review that entirely, it was a show that took place on in the UK, so a special SmackDown only edition. Apart from one notable Raw superstar appearing, which was Booker T, who was in the match in the night's opener, defeating Matt Hardy. So,
Rebellion is a fun show. It's the only Edge Brock Lesnar match. Am I wrong there? Certainly feels like it.
I believe so. I mean, I know they tag team together occasionally, but obviously because Edge gets injured at No Way Out. But yeah, I think this is the only match they actually have with each other.
Right, because Edge gets injured, and then Edge is actually on the shelf for the rest of Brock Lesnar's run. And by the time Lesnar comes back, Edge is retired. Huh. So yeah.
Yeah, so we also had other matches on Rebellion. So mixed tag team match, Billy Kidman and Tori Wilson defeating John Cena and Dawn Marie.
That's I'm guessing that's a one and done, and you never see that again.
There's a good potential with that. Funaki defeated Crash Holly.
Why?
I know. because it's a UK house show. That's why.
Fair enough.
Jamie Noble defended the Cruiserweight Championship against Rey Mysterio and Tajiri in a triple threat elimination match.
That sounds like fun.
Reverend Devon and Ron Simmons defeated Chuck Palumbo and the Big Valboski.
That doesn't even need to be on this show. Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on.
Rikishi defeated Albert in a Kiss My Ass match.
Rikishi should have more matches on pay-per-view.
Yeah, and Albert, who hasn't even been wrestling in the main shows.
He's the hip-hop hippo.
Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle defended the WWE Tag Team Championships against Los Guerreros.
I mean, the four names are there, so you know that was a very good match.
And in the main event, Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman in a handicap match defeated Edge for the WWE Championship.
Really fun. Again, it's one of those ones that they never wrote it back, so it's unique to actually go out of your way and watch Rebellion for this match. And for a few of the other ones too, because it's a couple that you don't see again.
So yeah, that was Rebellion. Obviously, we haven't done like a full review of it, but we will be doing sometime soon a review both of Super Tuesday, which was a special edition of. I guess it's just a special WWE presentation.
It was a
matches both Raw and SmackDown.
I don't know what and maybe the observers will shed some light on it. I don't know what the intent was for Super Tuesday, but it was definitely a unique airing that they never ever did again.
Yep, so we'll do a bit of a review of that for the Patreon as well as obviously Survivor Series coming up as well, which is a much bigger show, which we will definitely be doing a review for.
One of the best Survivor Series of all time.
So there was also news that Mick Foley pulled out of an appearance that he'd scheduled for Bite This as a result of the Katie Vick angle. So I guess he has his limits.
So Mick Foley strikes me, I guess this isn't a surprise, but he's a very sensitive man. Because he's the only guy who pulled out of WWE that wasn't related to Bret Hart after the screw job. And now you're telling me he pulled out of Bite This for the Katie Vick angle? I mean, Mick, you were willing to give your life for this company just years prior to this. I don't know, it's a tasteless angle, but he knows Vince McMahon's humor, does he not?
I think it's just one of those indications that there are certain lines which you don't cross. And for certain wrestlers, it's just too much, really.
Well, Mick Foley crossed the line when he went to TNA.
Speaking of which, that's actually quite a good segue and intentionally there, because the other big story is about TNA, which is that an ownership deal is currently in negotiation at this point in time between the Jarrett family and Panda Energy.
Yes, here we go. This is it.
Over the acquisition of TNA. Obviously, Panda Energy is, Dixie Carter's father's company, but this is essentially the era where Dixie Carter will start to take ownership over TNA.
That's big news.
Yeah. As a bit of a look ahead for next week the deal is officially comes together. So by this time, while you're listening to us on the next week's edition, Panda Energy now owns TNA in late 2002.
Huh. I wonder, has anybody ever interviewed Dixie about, getting away from the asylum in Nashville and stuff like that, because we don't see the Impact deal come together until mid 04.
Yeah, I obviously don't know what the ins and outs of all of that stuff was. Maybe we either
We're
she
gonna get a
interviewed or we'll
documentary
figure
at
out.
some point.
I
At
know
some
she's done
point,
like
we
a
gotta
kayfabe.
know.
I know she's done a kayfabe commentaries before while she was still owning TNA because she say what you will about her, but she is either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid.
I think there's a happy medium that describes Dixie Carter, because when she ran TNA and was doing the kayfabe commentary stuff, they still had like everybody, I think. So, good for her for doing things and thinking outside of the box. I don't think she's ever involved in wrestling again. That's just me.
I think it'd be unlikely. But obviously, a big part of this as well was the idea that Vince Russo was trying to take full creative control from Jerry Jarrett in terms of the creative side of things. And yeah, I guess that, as we know, Vince Russo is a big reason why TNA probably is in the state that it is right now as Impact Wrestling, which is not a terrible wrestling promotion, but in no way reaching an audience that they could potentially do if Dixie Carter hadn't ruined the relationship with every other big television station that Impact was ever on by relying on Vince Russo too much.
Yeah, I don't know why Vince Russo. Vince Russo also went to WWE this year, right?
Yeah, he was there for like a hot minute and then left to join TNA.
Like he came in and looked around and saw that there was a full room of writers and was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this." He wanted, say what you will about Russo being, I'm a writer and I write TV. He'd never wanted that lifestyle beyond the professional wrestling writer that is basically just a one-person booker. Because you would think that somebody who claims to be a writer would like the idea of sitting in a writer's room, and that was not his style.
No, I think what we talked about earlier on in the series is the fact that Russo got an offer from TNA, which was less money than I believe he was getting for the WWE offer, but he would have to come into essentially live in Connecticut to be part of WWE, and this one allowed him to work remotely, even though he did obviously come into Nashville because he got to be a character by being on TNA.
I think that now I would be interested to see if nowadays, if some people who maybe in the past were adverse to traveling, if they would do a WWE run now, because obviously, the way the world has changed with the pandemic, remote jobs are more likely. So I wonder if that would lead to something like a Vince Russo doing a WWE, and you would say that probably would never happen, but Bischoff was just there. So who really knows?
I think it will happen more when Triple H and Stephanie are in control. It still feels like that's an innovation that Vince doesn't really think is workable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
So now we've gotten the news out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the ratings war between Raw and SmackDown at this time. SmackDown's rating for the Halloween edition of SmackDown. Obviously, Halloween was going to hurt the ratings because it's a holiday. So they were down to a 3.84. The first time they've dipped below 4 since the 29th of August. So that didn't help. Raw's rating, surprisingly enough, from the Katie Vick angle the previous week, dropped from a 3.7 to a 3.4.
No. I mean, come on, Katie. It's Katie Vick, man. That's a historic angle.
Well,
I mean,
that's why.
people.
That's why they decided to make it the opening segment of this show as well,
Yeah.
which was Triple H doing a ventriloquist act with a dummy of Katie Vick on his lap. Obviously, this time he wasn't inside the dummy at the same time, so that made it a bit more palatable. But it was still terrible comedy. And Hurricane retorted by showing a video that he'd sourced of a guy in a Triple H mask getting an enema on TV.
That's
where
cute.
where the doctors pulled out certain objects, including a sledgehammer, a hand, a squirrel, various car parts, and a model of Triple H's own head.
Hunter is so much better than this. I really want to put that out there.
Yeah, this is top level WWE comedy at this point in time. No wonder they're getting killed in the ratings.
Yeah, like, wow, I can't believe Triple H allowed himself to do this.
Well, I guess he was in a precarious situation as not quite being married into the family yet.
That's true.
So there was, in terms of more stupid comedy, Test started his whole testicles campaign with Stacey.
God damn it.
So
Why, Callum?
the whole story behind this one is the fact that Kane had his Canaanites, Hulk Hogan has the Hulkamaniacs, so The Rock has the people, so Test has to have his testicles.
Why? Like, I don't understand, Callum.
Because they didn't value Test, and I think they value Test as like, okay, he's a big strong guy, but he doesn't have any personality, so let's give him personality by giving him testicles and make him say testicle all the time because that's character.
Yeah.
There was a building up of a feud between the Dudley Boys and 3 Minute Warning when 3 Minute Warning took out Spike Dudley at the behest of Eric Bischoff. Bubba later in the night instead teamed with Jeff Hardy to take on the tag team champions Chris Jericho and Christian, but they were defeated due to a distraction by 3 Minute Warning. So that's leading towards Survivor Series, as we all know.
Yep, and thankfully, again, outdoing one of the stupidest things WWE ever did.
Chris Nowinski defeated Booker T by disqualification due to being attacked by Al Snow. So they've already that partnership has fallen apart, really.
What do you think happened there? Like,
well, the story that they're telling on the thing is that Al Snow wanted to help Chris Nowinski because he's a Tough Enough alumni, but Chris Nowinski thinks that he can do it all on his own. So during this match, he was constantly mocking Al Snow, and so Al Snow got angry and attacked him, and Booker T took both of them out because of it.
Fair enough.
Bischoff announced the competitors for the Elimination Chamber match at Survivor Series 2002.
Thank God. Some, like, good shit here.
So the announced 6 men for the first ever Elimination Chamber match at Survivor Series was Triple H defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Rob Van Dam, Kane, Booker T, Chris Jericho, and Shawn Michaels.
Okay, so this was always an issue with me, and still is, kind of. Why is Shawn in this match? What made them realize, oh, Shawn is just a wrestler again?
I don't know, because the idea was that they were still circling around in terms of people talking at that stage about the fact that this was Michael's just one more match, and this would be it for him.
Yeah, like, I don't understand why they decided, oh, let's not only just make him a wrestler, let's throw him in this never before done match. Very strange.
Raw was clutching at straws to make things interesting. And so the Elimination Chamber obviously is a great concept and it's sustained to this very day. But it's the idea, it was built up on the idea of, fuck, nothing is working, our ratings are dropping all the time, all this is going terrible, we need something to make things interesting. Why don't we just throw 6 guys into a cell and see what happens?
Yep, that sounds about right.
So Trish Stratus defended the Women's Championship against Jacqueline and Molly Holly in a triple threat match. So no Victoria involved in that one. I don't know why they decided to just do a random women's title match, but hey-ho.
Ratings.
And Kane defeated Triple H in the main event in a casket match.
And this is where Shawn Michaels comes back.
Yeah, due to Shawn Michaels' interference, Shawn Michaels is back. Kane chokeslams Triple H into the coffin, and Michaels does a dance on top of the coffin at the end of it.
So this is very much like weird, hasn't found himself yet, Shawn Michaels, and I know that will be a story plot in the Armageddon build, but I think they would have been better served, knowing what we know now, to just do Shawn and Hunter at Madison Square Garden. If you were gonna have Shawn come back, like, I think it should have been one-on-one. I mean, who am I to say, don't do the chamber? This chamber is great. We did a fan announce table that's up on our YouTube channel, but it still just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think that maybe it was still the idea that Michaels isn't quite ready yet, so we'll try and subvert it with having more guys in the ring for him to work with.
That's fair.
But that was what Raw was up to, so let's move on to the meat of this review, which is obviously for a SmackDown, October 31st, 2002, from the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
You could say what you want about, cheesy WWE Halloween things. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a fun backstage thing. It was in no way offensive, over the top, or anything like that, but yeah, it's just a nice little gimmick that you can do every once in a while. I think it's the fact that WWE is so littered today with just shitty comedy.
Yeah.
When they do it once in a blue moon on SmackDown, you find it, okay, this is pretty charming and interesting, and then get into the actual matches and they're all really good. Whereas WWE is just wall to wall, everything just is a joke. So it's hard to find any sort of levity in that.
Completely.
So we get the first shot to the Halloween party. So there's tons of SmackDown superstars in costumes. We have Farouk dressed as a pimp, complaining to a waitress about his drink. Chavo is dressed. Oh, Eddie Guerrero, sorry to say, is dressed as Zorro, and Chavo is dressed as some sort of like Mexican bandit. I don't know if he was like a specific character. I know he was holding a stick of dynamite.
I couldn't figure that out either. But well, and this is later in the show. I don't know if you want to get through all of the Halloween stuff in one shot. But one of my favorite things was Eddie kind of hitting on Stephanie.
We will feed in and out of it, but yeah, that was pretty funny because Stephen. Oh, first of all, have Tajiri as a disco dude.
Yeah, he had a busy night, didn't he?
Yeah, with Shannon Moore there as like some really lame devil costume that he clearly picked up like the day before. Like, oh shit, it's Halloween tomorrow. Just find a costume from somewhere, anything. Just
I wouldn't be surprised if they like had people just go get random Halloween costumes that were different sizes.
yeah, I think that'd be like a fun little. I would like it if they played that prank on like a couple of them, and the rest of them had costumes supplied, and the other ones just had to rush around looking for one at the last minute. That's like a harmless little prank that you can do on someone.
Yeah, which is totally their style.
And then Stephanie welcomes everyone to the party dressed as a witch. I think the only thing that I could really say at that point in time is like, if all witches looked like Stephanie looked, I think there'd be a lot less burnings at the stake.
I agree.
Yeah, so she announces tonight's main event will feature a man who wears a mask 365 days a year, except when you're in the last few years of WCW. And that's Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio.
What a great match. I wished, and they had a good match last year in 2019, but like I wish we would have seen more of this when they were in their prime.
Yeah. So Mysterio celebrates, and then something that I was shocked to hear is that you can clearly hear the start of Backstreet's Back playing. And I'm thinking, how the hell do you get the rights to that still on the network? Maybe they just don't realise that it's there.
I don't think they realized it.
Yeah. So we cut to the arena. There's a like Halloween themed Titantron, and there's people in the crowd wearing tons of costumes. I saw people with like Ultimate Warrior masks and Jason masks, and there's one guy dressed as The Rock. Like, yeah, just good to see just people dressed up in the spirit of the equation. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like
people in an arena. That's already still like weird enough at this point in time, but they're also having fun and wearing costumes, and they had signs and everything. God, the wrestling crowds were so much more fun back then.
And I don't know why they would think, hey, let's get rid of fun.
Well, everything's like serious now. Everything is about making moments, not about making fun.
I guess that's the problem.
So we kick off with the opener, which is Chris Benoit versus Edge. So they really are just hitting home with basically every combination of the SmackDown 6 they possibly can find. And as is no surprise, this is another good match between these two.
They never had a bad match. They're so much fun. I think Benoit, it goes a long way in toughening Edge up. And one of the biggest regrets of Edge's injury to me is that we never see like the Edge Benoit tag team against Team Angle, you know, because they were all doing stuff together. That would have been some good stuff.
So I noticed on this one that Benoit takes a Bret Hart corner bump, and that's a move that I'm seeing more and more in these shows.
Yeah.
I wonder like why people now started thinking that that's like a great. It's a good looking bump. Don't get me wrong, but it's just a case of it was just first of all like there was nobody doing it, and now it seems like 3 or 4 wrestlers are now incorporating that into their arsenal at the same time. Just seems a little odd to me.
Thing of like they all sat down and watched a Bret match together, and people were just like, you know what, that's a fun bump, and nobody's doing it, and then they were like, I'm gonna do it.
So Edge misses a baseball slide attempt, and Benoit starts targeting his shoulder with a few strikes, and then delivers a drop kick to Edge's shoulder against the steel steps, and that gives him the heat. So Edge at this point starts bleeding from the nose, and I don't know where that came from, but he's bleeding not heavily, but he's bleeding.
Could have been just like a hard strike, because I know when when they're in the ring together, they like legit beat the shit out of each other.
I mean, yeah, he is wrestling Chris Benoit, so those sort of things are willing to happen. They do a few chop exchanges as well. German suplexes by Benoit. He goes to the diving headbutt. Edge rolls away. Edge then Benoit then takes a massive bump off the Edge-o-matic. Like he really just like takes the hardest back bump that you possibly can do from a standing position. Because say what you will about the like consequence of taking those bumps, but they'd look good when he does them.
I mean, it sucks, right? Because we want to praise the worker that he was, but we also know that the intensity of his work led to a tragedy. So it's very hard to really praise all this stuff.
Towards the end, Benoit gets Edge locked in the crossface. He manages to like pull at the referee rather than tapping out. So he pulls at the referee so much that the referee like turns his back on the entrance ramp, and this allows Kurt Angle to come in, pull Benoit off the crossface. Edge then baseball slides, takes both of them out. He dives from the top rope, but only hits a clothesline to Angle as Benoit dodges it. Then Benoit gets Edge back in the ring. Edge ducks clothesline, nails the spear, gets the win over Benoit. So, yeah, this is obviously to build up to the fact that we are going to be having a 2 out of 3 Falls Tag Team Championship match next week, pitting Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit against Edge and Rey Mysterio.
Which I will spoil something right now is, if you told me to make a Mount Rushmore of wrestling matches that occurred on free television, that's up there.
It's going to be a very good match. I'm excited to review that one in total. But yeah, this was still a very good match. I do worry a little bit that they are seeming to just tread the same. They feel like a little bit of treading water now in the Benoit Angle stuff.
You know what? They don't never really pay it off. You can make the argument that like, well, they fight at the Royal Rumble, but they take a long detour before getting to the Royal Rumble. So I have to say, like, I kind of wish that they would have stopped the infighting with Benoit and Angle for a while, because it never leads to anything.
Yeah, I think like it would have worked a little bit better with the begrudging tag team respect. Maybe it seems like their long-term, well, I say long-term vision, but their vision was, let's give the original titles to them because they're obviously two standout names, so it gives the titles immediate legitimacy. Then we give it to the baby faces to have a good moment on SmackDown, and then we give it to the team that we actually want to have essentially running this division for a while in Los Guerreros.
Yeah, and they really did. I didn't realize how long the Guerreros, and specifically, I guess, once you hit a certain point, Eddie ends up in the tag division, because it really takes him straight from that almost to like his WWE run, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, cut back to the party. John Cena delivers his first ever rap.
What a moment! What a moment in history! Like, it's meant to be cheesy and dorky, but like knowing what we know now, this is almost like his Hulk Hogan coming back to WWE moment in the 80s. Like, this is a huge moment.
Yeah, the rap itself is actually a very good freestyle for the most part. And the most terrible thing about it is that Cena then, in future, obviously progresses with the Dr. Thugonomics rap gimmick. But as he gets more over, his raps just become promos, essentially. Which essentially, he says a line, then he says it really slowly, then he says another line that rhymes with it, waits for the crowd reaction, and then carries on. Whereas in this one, he's, doing what freestyle rappers do, which
actually rapping, yeah. I will say this makeup lady gets a lot of play in these episodes of SmackDown for some reason.
Yeah, she must have like tenure or something, and is using that to get some extra screen time. I think Jan, the makeup lady, actually like. I don't think this is just like 2002 thing. I think she sustains to be quite a prominent extra character for quite a few years beyond this point.
That's good. I don't recall her too much, but I kind of like that. You should use your like the auxiliary people you have. You have so many,
Yeah. Tori Wilson arrives dressed as Xena. She bumps into Tajiri, who says that he has a new girl. So that's a nice little callback from earlier in the year with Tori and Tajiri not exactly being on best terms.
Yeah, I do want to note the Xena outfit doesn't look like the exact one, but she basically does a Xena cosplay for the Armageddon poster photo shoot. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering if it was like the same time frame.
maybe there's like a good possibility for that. Tajiri then taps the back as someone dressed as Marilyn Monroe, hoping it was like a good-looking woman he can use to maybe make Tori jealous. And it turns out to be Mae Young, dressed as
Ah,
Moolah, dressed
ah,
as Marilyn Monroe, and Moolah's with her dressed as Wilma Flintstone, I think.
that I love Bula and Mae Young. This shit is so silly.
Yeah, so
The-
Tajiri is now stuck in their traps for the well, at least for the remainder of his time at the party. And then Al Wilson arrives dressed as the Fonz with Dawn Marie on his arm as a sexy cop.
This was the best. First of all, Al Wilson here does look like modern day Henry Winkler,
Yeah, I know. I
and
thought that as
like,
well.
and like I really enjoyed the fact that Al Wilson is feeling cool with this hot young girl, so he dresses as the Fonz because that's like his era, of cool. I love that.
I do appreciate the fact Dawn Marie just leans into the trope of Halloween for like hot women, which is essentially so just take anything and make it sexy. Cop, sexy cop. Mouse, sexy mouse. That sort of thing from like Mean Girls and stuff like that. It's just yeah, it's a very common Halloween trope.
I did really enjoy everything that Dawn and Tori did. This is peak diva what they do tonight, but it was good.
So Benoit interrupts the party looking for Kurt Angle, but when he can't find him, he leaves, like frustrated. And then a guy in a screen mask takes the costume off, and it's Kurt Angle. So he's avoided Benoit for the time being.
I actually expected this to go the other way around. I thought he was gonna beat up the guy, thinking it would be Angle, and then it would just be some schlub. But no, it was Angle, and he got away with it.
So Brock Lesnar walks backstage. He runs into Mark Lloyd dressed as Pebbles, because of course he is.
What is wrong with Mark Lloyd?
Lloyd asks who Lesnar's dressed as, and Lesnar bluntly replies, "I'm the WWE champion."
Mark Lloyd is an idiot. Mark Lloyd is like peak, just generic interviewer with no personality, and he's a dork.
So he enters the locker room and sits down next to Paul Heyman. Heyman talks about the thriller in Manila between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and says that match changed both of those guys' lives. They weren't the same coming out of that match as they were going into it. And that the equivalent this year was Lesnar's match against The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell from No Mercy. Heyman talks about the fact that Lesnar hasn't been checked yet. He doesn't know how much damage that match did to him, but now he's going after the Big Show. He talks about the fact that he can't manhandle the Big Show because he's too large. He can't suplex him. He won't be able to get him up to an F5. And Heyman just basically flat out says Brock Lesnar can't beat the Big Show.
I remember watching this as a child and thinking, that's pretty crappy that like Heyman just doesn't believe in his guy. And watching this now, I felt very much the same. Like, why wouldn't you believe? Why wouldn't you believe in your guy?
That is true. Obviously, we know for the reason is that at this point Lesnar's not his guy anymore. He just doesn't know it.
Yeah, and I don't recall the basically Big Show alludes to this by saying that he was uh advised
Yeah.
to not. Yeah, I'm like, wow, wait a minute. Nobody picked up on that?
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that point as well because Big Show is having a match with Rikishi following this. But the one extra element that I liked about this segment, even though it was also a very good backstage segment, is the fact that Heyman talks about this is the reason that people like him make decisions for people like Lesnar.
Very good line.
Yeah, basically saying that Lesnar's a hothead, he doesn't know what he's doing, he'll just dive into deliver things with brute force, whereas Heyman is the smart one out of the arrangement, and that's why he needs Heyman.
Very good line. And I think their dynamic here is so much better than the dynamic they would have later on as Heyman just being like the big match promoter with the scary UFC fighter.
I think they're two separate ones. Obviously, I think the dynamic here works, but Heyman is a lot more animated in this one than he would be as the advocate for Brock Lesnar moving forward. But I think both of them have definite high points. But yeah, this is good stuff. We move on to the Big Show's first match as part of SmackDown against Rikishi. Big Show is dressed in a black shirt and black slacks. So new attire for
I
him
couldn't
entirely.
figure out what vibe they were going for with that. Like, is he supposed to be, you know, like a high class fighter? You know, because he would dress much nicer in this run than he would at pretty much any other run in his career. But I couldn't figure out, like, what is the meaning of that?
I think they were just going through a period of like, he's on a new show now, he's got a bit of a new character and an edge about him, so we need to give him a new look, but they weren't certain about what that look was going to be yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair because they would end up keeping like the slacks, but he wouldn't keep the shirt. I like the shirt more than what he would end up in.
So like I say, Big Show takes on Rikishi in this match. So Rikishi hits a pair of Savate kicks early on that sends Big Show to the floor, but from that point on, basically it's all Big Show. So Big Show sends him into the ring post. He does a clothesline followed by the classic Rikishi flip bump. He sends Rikishi into the exposed turnbuckles that he exposed in the corner. Then he easily lifts Rikishi over his shoulder for a running power slam.
Good display of power.
Yeah. Then just gets this wild look in his eyes, hits the choke slam to Rikishi, beats him in a matter of minutes. And Rikishi's no joke, obviously. I know obviously the stink face and all that other stuff, but in terms of how he's been booked on SmackDown, he's no easy person to defeat. And Big Show made it look easy. So they are doing a standout job, at least at the very beginning, of making Big Show seem like a big deal again.
Yeah, I don't know why he goes through these peaks and valleys in his career. Angry Big Show with a purpose is one of the best characters you could ever have.
So Show then cuts a promo saying that this is just a taste of what Brock can expect at Survivor Series. He challenges Brock to come out, calls him a little man. Brock marches around backstage, but Heyman is trying to stop him from getting out there. Big Show then cuts a promo after the break saying he'll wait as long as he needs to until Brock comes out. They show a replay of Show destroying The Undertaker from the previous week. Calls Brock a child. And
Which he was at this point.
Yeah, because obviously he's like a young guy coming into it. He says that he hasn't experienced reality yet, and reality is a 7 foot tall, 500-pound giant.
I think that's fair.
He says everyone knows Show can beat Brock except for Brock, which I don't think many people actually believe Big Show was going to beat Brock.
Yeah.
I think they just assumed, okay, just another guy for Brock to defeat on his current run, and then we'll see who actually is the one that they have to beat him and take his undefeated streak from him.
I think, I keep going back to the rumored Hogan thing. That would have been good, but I think this set a better stage for the rest of SmackDown throughout the run that we'll be covering.
So Brock finally does make it to the ring. He stands toe-to-toe with Show. Show says that he agrees that Big Show is a giant piece of shit.
The only thing I didn't like about this line was that he waited too long to say shit.
Yeah, it's almost like he was waiting for the censor to catch up with him.
But I really enjoyed the "you are a giant piece of shit." I thought that was a great line for Brock.
Show then retreats, saying he's been, as we mentioned earlier, he's been advised not to beat up Brock until the title was at stake. But then Show promises to do something to Lesnar that nobody has ever done before later tonight. So yeah, that's the segment there. We cut backstage where Tori is stretching as she's about to meet Dawn Marie at the chocolate pit.
Straight up shot of her ass because 2002, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that, like I said, peak diva, what we're about to see, but it was good.
Yeah, so they both are going to meet. So it's Tori Wilson against Dawn Marie in essentially a chocolate milk trick-or-treat pool match. I don't really know how they described it. I can't remember off the top of my head. But essentially, they both enter from the stage, walk all the way down the ramp, then have to walk up the side of the ramp in order to get
I couldn't understand that.
Yeah, get to the chocolate pool that's over there. Tori immediately throws a pie in Dawn Marie's face that's all set up in there. And so we start with a big food fight. And then eventually, Tori spears Dawn into the pool. And they do some, I guess, what you would class as wrestling in the pool. Would you, though? Well, just a load of pulling and grabbing at each other and stuff like that in the chocolate milk for a while. Dawn Marie then pulls the referee into the pool. because
Yeah.
it's funny.
Because why not? I
Then
get it.
then Tori Wilson hits a snap suplex in this pool. Just like, what the fuck? It's just
You've got to wrestle, like wrestling.
Tori then removes Dawn Marie's shirt. They exchange like chops for some reason, like they were just chopping each other, like it's like some sort of Benoit Ric Flair match going on.
Again, they got inspired to wrestle.
And then they roll over the referee, like you say, more Pete Diva stuff. Tori then spanks Dawn Marie, chops her out of the pool. She falls over on her back. Tori covers her, even though all she's experienced is like a chop and fell over. She gets the pin, and as she's celebrating, she grabs Tony Chimmel on the outside, throws him into the pool as well.
We're just having a laugh. We're just having a good time.
Yeah, this is, like, as you say, Pete Diva shit.
Yeah.
So we cut backstage back to the Halloween party where Tajiri is being harassed by Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah, and then the lights go out and Matt Hardy's music hits.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah, he says this party needs some much needed matitude. Everybody like boos him because he's interrupting again. Like he has this little boom box where he's playing his music on.
I think that's hysterical.
He calls Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah his version BC, which I thought that was a pretty funny line. He then removes Tajiri's wig. Young says that he can't do that to her boyfriend, which Tajiri doesn't seem to be on board with at all.
Yeah, I love Mae Young.
Hardy leaves to go prepare for their match, but as Tajiri goes, saying that he needs to go for the match, Mae grabs him in, kisses him. Tajiri is like just left in shock. Surprisingly enough, that isn't the most bewildering kiss that happened on this show.
No, it's not. No.
So we'll move on to that later on. But after the break, there's more from the Halloween party as Nydia, dressed as Jamie Noble, successfully bobs for apples, cheered by Noble, dressed as Nydia. Eddie and Chavo then approach Stephanie like a pair of horn dogs, and Eddie, like you say, Eddie is definitely trying to come on to Stephanie, but then he realizes that, oh my god, this is my boss. Let's take the thing seriously a little bit.
And then I like how he goes, like he's just completely hitting on her, and then he goes, "Oh wait, so since you're my boss,
yeah,
give me a title match." Like.
So he says after he beats Angle tonight, they want a shot at the tag team titles. She says that she'll think about it. Eddie and Chavo leave. And then Cena comes up to her, does another little rap about how he's
He called
what was it?
Like light beer.
Yeah, because he's less filling.
Less filling.
Yeah. Surely you'd want to be more filling. It's kind of I thought that was the line that he was kind of going for. With if you like coming on to someone, that would be the line to go with, maybe.
Yeah, I guess, John hasn't figured it out yet. He would.
So Stephanie says she has no idea what he's talking about. So Cena then says in plain English that her dad is in the office waiting for her. And Stephanie heads off to see if Vince is in her office. And Cena just gets frustrated in a half about the fact that his raps aren't going over well.
What I don't like about this is that Stephanie very clearly knows that her father isn't there. Like, she's very like, Vince, are you sure? Like, but yet, here we are. We get it anyway.
So we have a match between Matt Hardy and Tajiri now. Matt Hardy's attitude facts for the day are that he gets more Halloween candy than Jeff.
Funny.
And that he's seen all of the Friday the 13th movies. Which would be kind of a hard task nowadays. But maybe it was slightly easier back in 2002.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's been a lot over the last 18 years.
So there's a reminder about a SmackDown Your Vote campaign event, which is happening the day before a certain number of elections.
Yeah, when this comes out, you should also smack down your vote this coming Tuesday.
Yep.
Smack down your vote, guys.
Yep, pick the lesser of two evils.
Yep.
This match is, again, it's a very good match because every time I watch Tajiri, it's always a very good match.
Yeah, MVP of this run.
Yeah, he's been, and obviously the SmackDown 6 has been great, but Tajiri he can make any single match look like a lot of fun. Like at one point he flips out of a wrist lock, does a few arm drags, and then mocks Matt Hardy's pose. Hardy gets a schoolboy at one point. He talks about the fact how he nearly beats Tajiri with the schoolboy, and as he gets into Tajiri's face, like making a little motion with his fingers, saying it was this close, Tajiri just kicks him in the face. kicks Matt Hardy out of the ring, and then delivers an Asai moonsault because Tajiri can do basically everything.
Yep.
Hardy delivers a side effect, takes control over Tajiri for a little while. Eventually, he goes for the second rope leg drop. Tajiri rolls away from it. There's an explosive drop kick to the face by Tajiri at one point, which they had to replay because it looked so good. And then there's just tons of really good super kicks. Like one point, he bridges out of a pin attempt by Hardy and then delivers a great kick to the back of the head of Hardy. That was an awesome spot.
I think that this match. Oh, first of all the wrestling tonight was actually very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah,
but this match, I think, does this start Matt Hardy's cruiserweight run unofficially?
I guess it kind of does. It kind of feels like he's part of that division now at this point. But as we'll see next week, he's still taking on some bigger guys as well. Frankly, the biggest guy that he could potentially take on at this point. But Tajiri Hardy reverses a tarantula attempt into a German suplex. But Tajiri then gets another tarantula in the middle of the ring. He misses the buzzsaw kick, reverses a twist of fate. Hardy then hits a low blow while the referee's distracted, hits another twist of fate, gets the victory. So, yeah, good little match, this one.
Very good.
Okay, now we're here. So, we've promised this super weird segment. If you aren't aware of this segment, if you are aware of this segment, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you're not aware of this segment, then you'll probably be surprised about this, definitely to a degree, because basically everyone else was. Probably including the guys when they were told this is what we're going to be doing on this episode of SmackDown. So Stephanie enters her office. She finds someone in the office wearing a Vince McMahon mask. So it's clearly not Vince, but it's wearing a very... Do you think they sold these masks?
They did.
They did. They actually licensed
I'm pretty sure you can still get some of them up on highspots.com.
So the man tells her that he believes that Raw is going to sign Scott Steiner. She says what makes them think about that, and they reveal the mask, and shock of shock, it's Eric Bischoff saying that he's going to sign into Raw. And then it gets weird. It
does.
So yeah, Stephanie goes to slap Bischoff. Bischoff catches the slap, then smooches Stephanie. Stephanie fights off first, just slapping on the chest, constantly trying to get him off. But then after a couple of seconds, she gets into it. They start making out on the desk, break the kiss. They separate, look at each other like, oh my God, what the fuck are we doing? Bischoff leaves, and Stephanie just looks bewildered by the end of it.
The best thing about this is that Triple H uses this as his reasoning for thinking Bischoff has it in for him, because Stephanie is making him do this, and that's why Bischoff is making him go into something like the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Now there's your one positive out of. Let's discuss this. Let's really Eric Bischoff, the guy who ran WCW, gets hired by Vince McMahon, and in no less than 6 months, Vince gives the okay for Bischoff to make out with his daughter under the premise that he came looking as Vince. What is this?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. There's the layer of the fact that he was dressed as Vince McMahon beforehand and then made out with Vince's daughter, which is, I guess that you could see some sort of subtext in that if you're really looking hard enough. There is the fact that these two are mortal enemies, supposedly, from the last few months. The fact that Bischoff they haven't even done anything in the last few weeks together. And they decide just randomly Bischoff's going to appear on this show and make out with Stephanie. There's the fact that, and we can spoil this now, there is zero follow-up to this segment. It's just basically, I think
this actually ends all of the brand stuff.
Yeah, so it's basically the side of there is some follow-up in the fact that Bischoff and Stephanie both kind of watched the segment back the following week and kind of wonder what was going on. But then it's one of those things where it's a weird encapsulation of history that's this thing happened, but you could take it out of history and nothing else would change. It's that sort of thing. It's okay, this really weird thing happened, and if it didn't happen, nothing else in the world would be any different.
When Monday Nitro went on the air, Stephanie was 18 years old. I just like, there's a lot about this.
Mm.
You know, there
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, I don't think Bischoff ever expected this segment to happen. I don't think Stephanie ever expected it to happen until she was told to do it. And it's just a case of, I don't know. I know Bischoff has talked about it in interviews because obviously this is one of the big things that any interviewer would probably ask him about his run in WWE. But it's just a case of, I think he just talks about the fact that they just wanted to do it as a one-off thing, and there was no plans to, surprise with WWE, there were no plans beyond this point.
It was just, and then there's like the weird, all right, let's dissect the storylines that we've seen. We've seen, Tori Wilson and Don Ray are in this strange storyline. You had even Undertaker got sucked into a weird love storyline, and Kane did the whole Katie Vick stuff. It almost seems like the weird message here is that even at the highest executive levels, all tensions between men and women can be solved by sex. Like that.
Well, there's another level to it in the fact that Stephanie resisted him at first, which adds a whole new dimension to this thing, because this is essentially, it's not rape, but it's like, it is forcing someone on another person who's not consenting to it. But then it adds to a whole different dimension in the fact that Stephanie eventually consents to it.
So
that's a terrible fucking message to send out to anybody watching who's impressionable.
Which, at the ages we were, we definitely were.
I've never done this.
I've never done this either. I'm just saying, like, when you think about the fact that we were kids watching this stuff, like, and this was kind of, whether we knew it or not at the time, this was like what we were being shown that adults are like.
Well, yeah, but it's subversive in the idea that, like, if you are impressionable, if you are young or you're stupid or anything along those lines, you basically say, okay, just go up, you just go out, make out with a woman, and even if she hits you away and tells you no or anything like that, just keep doing it, and eventually she'll agree with you.
Yeah, she's gonna eventually get into it.
Fucking terrible message.
And then just, again, there's like this weird thing of like, even, and listen, we were taught this, like, even at the youngest age, oh, if the boy picks on you, he actually likes you, kind of thing. You take that to like the next level of, yeah, if she's being a bitch, she's like actually super into you, so you just gotta go for it. Like, it's really, really strange.
Yeah, so don't take the advice that they were presenting on this segment going forward or anything like that.
Then it comes down to this. Who was watching a lot of very bad, very cheesy adult film storylines and just got into their mind, that was on the writing staff at this time, oh, this is how people interact? Because you see a lot of just fucked up shit for a while.
It's just when I see those segments, the only person that could potentially want to see this is Vince. So I don't watch that segment and think, okay, maybe they posited this idea around the writing room and they started present it and Vince liked it and they went with it. This is just like Vince just went, hey, wouldn't it be funny if like the two general managers made out with each other, especially because one of them's my daughter and I'm going to be in the room watching her make out with a guy who's dressed in my mask.
Well, when you put it like that,
while I have a sheet over my lap so no one can see what I'm doing, that's all.
All right, we have no plans to cover 2003 Raw, do we?
No.
So then I have to ask you about this.
Okay, I know where you're going with this one.
Okay,
yes, he does make out with Linda McMahon as well.
Yeah.
And that one's even more creepy because he ties her hands behind her back and again.
Like he like there's no. It's creepier because unlike Stephanie, who eventually gives into it, like, no, he just forces himself on Linda, asks to see the bedroom, and then we never see any more of this segment. Are we led to believe that Linda had sex with Eric Bischoff?
Against her will.
Against her will. By the way, which Vince McMahon gleefully takes credit for like a week or two later. What the fuck?
Well, we could posit more about the fact that like Bischoff at certain points during his run propositions both Lita and Trish Stratus as well. So it's just the idea of the fact that why is WWE employing this pseudo rapist to be in their company in a position of power?
They went through this phase of like, yeah, women are totally into men with power, and like this is just the way the world is.
Because I'm pretty sure at one point that Bischoff has a match with Trish Stratus where if he wins the match, she has to have sex with him.
What?
Yeah, that's definitely a 2003 match. And
Wow. You know what? This shit is weird. Like, there comes a point where I'm glad, as bad as the diva stuff was, I'm glad we got to like the weird Barbie doll diva stuff, and we eventually got away from like the hey girls, just make out with your boss.
yeah, so I think we've covered that segment enough in depth. I mean, there are many other like psychological aspects we
I'm
could probably
sure
take to it, but
this won't be the last weird thing we cover in this series, so
it might be the weirdest.
it might be the weirdest.
Okay, so let's move on to some actual wrestling now with Kurt Angle versus Eddie Guerrero.
What a jump! What a jump!
Yeah. So
Okay.
so this match is great because it's Eddie and Kurt Angle, and Eddie and Kurt Angle have some of the best chemistry that I've ever seen of two people in a wrestling ring.
Yeah, this comes down to one of those like I wonder where Eddie would have ended up had he not had his life cut short. Because Eddie was Eddie in his 30s? When
He
did
was
he die?
38. He was 38 when he died.
Wow, so he probably had a good 5 or 6 years of a full-time career left. Because
Mm.
Ray is what?
He's definitely
50?
in his he's definitely his mid to late 40s now. Yeah.
So like Eddie could have done a lot of stuff. Eddie might have been a good candidate to end up in TNA with like a Kurt Angle. I think Eddie would have been a great candidate for a company like AEW. Now, when I look at a match like this, I just miss Eddie, and I like feel bad for the stuff that we did see in later years, and we didn't get more of Eddie.
So I don't say it's like it's as matches between SmackDown and go. I don't say it's on the lower end, but it's obviously a great match. But it's the idea of there's one point that I did get slightly annoyed about the fact that there is a really really long head scissors figure four spot, and I know it's the idea of like oh they're not rest holds, they're stretches. No, this was a rest hold. Like
Yeah.
they were sat in there for a good solid like 3 minutes, and I don't like segments like that. I understand occasionally they can work, but I just felt like that was a little bit too much. It was kind of built around the fact that early on in the match, Eddie delivered a Saito suplex, and basically on commentary for the entire time, they think that Angle's bell has been rung by that Saito suplex. So that's basically the story, is that Angle's working dizzy, essentially.
And he was working really hurt at this point, wasn't he?
Well, Angle was always working hurt. That's kind of like, that's part of
Like
the
that's
Angle
literally his
mantra.
thing.
Well, yeah, he was approaching, obviously, by the time we get to WrestleMania in 2003, his neck is essentially broken. So he needs to get that. He needs neck surgery beyond that point. So Angle's not in great shape at the moment, but he's still working hard, and they need him to work hard because essentially there is now a long-standing not narrative, I guess, but like a whole situation with the fact that Angle is the closest thing they have to a big star in WWE right now. He's the one that gets a lot of tickets attention. He's the one that they send to a load of public events, all this other stuff. So without The Rock, without Austin, without Hogan, Angle is the next best thing they've got.
Yeah.
And that just puts a lot more pressure on him.
And we will eventually see in early December a fantastic fatal four-way match that will eventually put Angle back in the title picture. But it really goes to show, like, by December, we've run through so many legends, and we're left with the tag team guys to duke it out to become the new #1 contender.
Yeah, I mean that's one way of looking at it.
I mean, I'm not saying it in like a negative context. Obviously, all four men in the match would go on to be world champions and great world champions at that. I'm just saying, for the time, it was probably like a really jarring jump, you know?
Yeah, I can understand that. There's triple German suplex by Angle. He tries the angle slam, but it's reversed into a brilliant-looking cradle by Eddie Guerrero. That was a nice reversal. Eddie hits a springboard tornado DDT. He applies the lasso from El Paso, but Angle, because he knows the reversal to every single submission and how to turn it into the ankle lock, picks the ankle of Eddie, applies the ankle lock from that position.
Is Kurt Angle the greatest wrestler of all time?
He's well up there.
Yeah, he really is.
I think technical wrestler of all time, I think yes.
I would agree.
It's close run thing. I think it's him, it's Bret Hart, it's Daniel Bryan, it's people like that. but I can't think of anyone that I would definitely say is better than Kurt Angle in the ring.
I think Kurt Angle, bell to bell, may be the greatest wrestler I've ever seen.
Low blow by Eddie with the referee distracted, hits the brainbuster. He climbs up to deliver the frog splash, but Angle then throws the referee into Eddie, crotching him on the top rope. Which is kind of funny is the fact that, okay, these are two heels fighting each other, so they're both going to cheat to try and get the edge over one another.
Because they were both heels, weren't they? Edge and Mysterio are the only baby faces.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird dynamic between those three teams at the moment, is that Eddie and Chavo are the definitive heels, and Edge and Rey Mysterio are the de facto baby faces, and then Benoit and Angle are in the middle, essentially switching allegiance based on which team they're facing.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. So Eddie's like stuck on the top rope now. Chavo tries to just get involved, but he gets distracted. He does distract the referee, even though he gets taken out. Angle then climbs up, looking to do his running belly to belly from the top rope, but Benoit is there. He grabs the title belt, hits Angle with the belt as he climbs up there. Eddie dives off with the frog splash on the fallen Angle, gets the pin, and yeah, both members of the tag team champions lose out tonight, thanks to each other, essentially.
Again, really weird thing. I almost to the point where I referenced that Fatal 4-Way. Probably should have come down to them. You know, like, we don't get a definitive end to this. They just kind of go their own way. And I think that that's a mistake.
I think once we get to the Fatal 4-Way, I can't remember it in like full detail, but I think the reason they went with Edge and Angle at the end is because they were building towards a Benoit
Guerrero match
at Armageddon as well. So they both took each other out of the match. So we'll obviously talk about that. It's a great match to look forward to in December. But we cut back to stage following this match, and Angle arrives and he's pissed off at the party. He then seems to like calm down. He starts talking to Shannon Moore, but then he grabs Shannon Moore and throws him straight through the table. He essentially like locks the room and says, "Nobody's going anywhere until I find Benoit." He walks up to the guy in the screen mask, who clearly isn't Benoit because he's like twice the width of Benoit.
But I like that Angle's like, oh, you're not going to do what I did. Hey, I think it's impressive that Angle thinks Benoit was watching the show while he was searching for Kurt Angle.
Yeah, and figured out that he was wearing the screen mask, and so decided, I'm going to do it again, but also I'm going to stuff 2 cushions under my stomach as well, just to make sure that he can't tell it's me. But it turns out it takes the mask off. It's brother love, because of course it's brother love.
He loves you.
Has to get some involvement somewhere. Benoit then attacks Angle from behind, and they get into a brawl over the cross. Like at one point, Angle, I thought this was pretty impressive, is the fact that Angle goes into the bobbing for apples pit, and he comes out. He's only in the water for about like 3 or 4 seconds, and he comes out and he's got an apple in his mouth.
Fantastic.
It's like, is there anything that Angle can't do?
Fantastic. Kurt Angle is my favorite. That's another reason why I think he's underrated. Like, he could also do all of the tickle butt. Yeah. You know? Angle is so good.
Yeah, he was as versatile a character as you possibly have, really. Benoit locks in the crossface. Angle gets out of that, picks the ankle again with the ankle hook. He then goes for an angle slam, but Benoit hits him with a bottle mid-angle slam. So Angle just collapses because he's been knocked unconscious with the bottle. But at the same time, he drops Benoit with the angle slam. Angle goes... He doesn't go through a table. He just hits a table and the table slides off alongside him. And so they're both left laid out at the end of it. It's a fun brawl.
These two guys can do anything.
Yeah, they're great.
Benoit, I really get upset because I would love to just full on gush about how great of a performer this guy was, but you can't because it always feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I totally understand, but I think it's fair to say that this segment was really fun. I still think about the idea that they're just going back to square one with these guys again, and I feel like they could have had at least, I don't know, a short run where they were more respectful of each other, or just like, okay, this guy's pretty good, and then they get into the brawl side of things. So if they decided to give them, like, I don't know, 2 months with the titles, they could have done that. But they were fast tracking, well, first of all, both getting the titles on Los Guerreros, and also the fact that, okay, we need to make Angle a main eventer like now. So
yeah.
So, all right, so we move on to the main event for the show, which is Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio in a non-title match.
Did I
So,
mention that I love the wrestling on the show?
the wrestling is great on this show. It's I mean, there's certain things I like about this, certain things that I wasn't as big a fan about. First of all, what's good is that Lesnar is walking the ring with Heyman. He takes the title off. He shoves it into Heyman, like pretty hard. So these guys are just really not on the same page right now.
Yeah, because I think Brock Lesnar is feeling he's really almost like he's full of himself. Like you can almost kind of agree with Heyman sometimes. 'Cause it's like, hey, maybe you are getting too big of a head. Maybe you think I can do anything. But obviously, no wrestling fan is going to agree with Paul Heyman.
No, of course.
At least not back in those days.
So he links up onto the apron, but Mysterio uses this opportunity to slide in between Lesnar's legs, and essentially it's a game of cat and mouse for the first minute or two of this match. So Mysterio drops the dime early, but Lesnar immediately gets back up. He launches Mysterio in the corner. Mysterio dodges a spear attempt, but isn't strong enough to deliver a schoolboy to Lesnar from there. More running around the ring. He hides next to the ring steps. Lesnar kicks the steps, thinking that Mysterio's behind there, but Mysterio has hid under the ring. He climbs up the top rope, delivers a seated senton from the top to the floor onto Lesnar, but Lesnar immediately gets back up, and that's kind of the thing that I didn't like about this, because I know obviously there's a huge size difference and they're looking to make Lesnar a monster, but if Mysterio can't do anything with those two moves that he hit early on, which are two of his standout moves, and Lesnar doesn't feel anything at all, it's kind of hard to believe that Mysterio can ever get beyond a certain level in your company.
Yeah, I wish they would have went full tilt with pushing Rey in this era, because I think he had more to offer in this era than later on.
So in the ring, Lesnar catches Mysterio on his shoulders, slams him against the ring post. He snatches Mysterio over his shoulder with total ease. So he's just essentially doing a backbreaker, like a back stretch across his shoulder. I think Cole mentioned about the fact that this is how Lesnar trains, is by just lifting 140-pound tree trunks onto his shoulders and stuff like that. So he's just holding Mysterio up there with ease.
That's a good call by Michael Cole.
Yeah, this is not everything he says is terrible, or
yeah,
it's definitely at this point in time. At least he's not saying boss time or big dog or anything like that.
Yeah, when Cole tries, he can actually be pretty decent.
Lesnar tosses Mysterio up from the mat at one point, catches him in midair, and then launches him with a belly to belly, because Mysterio is the ultimate guy to throw around if you're a big dude.
Especially this Mysterio.
Yeah, absolutely. Mysterio then avoids another spear in the corner. He hits a 619 to the ribs. Then he hits a series of drop kicks that eventually has Lesnar set up in position for a 619. Mysterio goes after it, but he's caught delivering that by the Big Show on the outside. So match ends in a no contest. Big Show lifts Mysterio easily over his head and then launches him 3 or 4 rows into the crowd.
Fantastic.
That was a great ECW style spot. I think obviously Heyman being the writer of this thing, this is prime Spike Dudley in ECW.
A great call.
So Mysterio's now out of the picture. Literally, he's as far away from the ring as you possibly can be at that point. Then Lesnar goes after Show, starts trying to get a few shots in, but Show outpowers him, sends him into the ring post with a spear. Then he clotheslines him on the floor, grabs him, choke slams, gets him up for a choke slam, gets him close to the announce table and drives him through. So Lesnar is sent crashing through the announce table. Big Show stands tall, and the challenger looks impressive on this first encounter between the two of them.
I think I first of all didn't like the Big Show chokeslam, but I'm gonna guess that was a Lesnar issue.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to really tell with that sort of thing. It's just the fact that he clearly doesn't get hold of him as closely as he would want to. So Lesnar essentially almost just has to jump backwards through the table because Show's just lost his grip.
Strange.
Yeah, because Show's just lost his grip. But so I don't know whether that's just Show losing his grip or Lesnar not going at the right time or anything like that. But it wasn't as clean as it could have been.
But I liked it, and I think Big Show is a guy who I think his style of booking almost hinders the future of WWE because they realize when you have a guy who can easily be seen as imposing and credible, you can shit on them and then just decide one day you want to make them credible. So I think that would overall be an issue for WWE, but Big Show here looks great. And I think I'm already beginning to see why he credits this run as saving his wrestling career.
So yeah, overall, this was a fun Halloween-themed edition of the show. A lot of really good in-ring matches, some fun backstage skits, and all the other stuff. Big Show is starting to look more and more impressive. But then you just come back to, yeah, but that Stephanie and Bischoff thing is
Yeah,
like...
and like we spent some time on it, and we could have spent so much more. I want you to know that we cut ourselves off because let me tell you, that was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it's just like it's a good episode of the show with like a lot of just fun moments, stuff like that. And then there's just that thing just thrown into the middle of it as like this bizarre turn into the Twilight Zone or whatever.
And
Just to, yeah.
I can honestly say I think I could have gotten over it had like if it was just Bischoff is a scumbag and pushes himself on Stephanie, fine, okay, but like no, because Stephanie has to be into it too much.
Yeah. So other than that, very good show. And what we have to look forward to next week. So there is some more good matches on the way, including a great match on the way, a 2 out of 3 falls tag team championship match, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit versus Edge and Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, one of my favorite matches ever in the history of wrestling TV.
We have a main event match, which many people maybe don't remember this one because obviously it falls definitely much in pales in comparison to their match at No Way Out 2004. But the main event is Brock Lesnar versus Eddie Guerrero.
I don't remember that.
We also have a Big Show Matt Hardy match, and you'll see why. It does actually make sense why those two are fighting each other. So we have Cena going full blown into the rapper gimmick and taking on Rikishi. It would be his first real feud in that role.
Is this before or after B squared?
This is before B squared.
All right.
This is before Jort still. Cena's still wearing the...
Yeah, he's still wearing the long pants.
Yeah. And then there's a very important question that Al Wilson has to ask Dawn Marie on this show as well.
Boy, I don't... See, this I'll flat out say. I don't recall this angle being so rapidly rushed.
Well, I guess when you're Al Wilson's age, you kind of have to do things quickly because you never know what's going to happen otherwise.
I guess so, huh?
As we'll find out at the very end of this thing as well. But yeah, so that's what you have to look forward to in episode 20. Not much else left to report now, except for just go through a few of the plugs. We already mentioned the Patreon earlier, the Darkcast here. Obviously, this is where you can see extra editions of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, where we review all of the 2002 and soon to be 2003 pay-per-views in the build-up to or through the course of the show. There's obviously other ways you can support us financially. Obviously, Patreon as well. There are tiers above the $10 Darkcast tier, like the Pick of Poison, where you can spend a little bit more and get us to do any show or any subjects you want on like wrestling related or maybe even non-wrestling related stuff. There's also, but even just $1, it goes a long way to helping us out. Other ways you can help is by going on the merchandise shops at Redbubble and TeePublic, but picking up a bit of Smark Out Moment merchandise. So that obviously helps. If you can't spare any spare change, we understand it. Times are tough. But what you can spare is a like or a share of any of the website articles or anything we've got going on our social media links. So on Facebook, on Twitter, joining the Mega Maniacs on Facebook, getting involved in the conversation there. Tony obviously has Fanboys Anonymous, your home for all geek culture content. So if you want to look for any content relating to movies or television or video games or comic books or anything of that ilk, definitely check out Fanboys Anonymous and their Facebook, their Twitter, their Patreon, all the other great stuff, all their merchandise. Rob, you want to throw out your bits and pieces?
I do, but before I do that, I will say it is Halloween, and next year's Halloween will be Tony's wedding to Caroline. So again, every bit of help that you guys can give, I know Tony appreciates it, and we appreciate it as well, because Tony works very hard and deserves to have a little bit of fun. As far as me and my plugs, I am over on Fightful and WrestleZone, so you can check out all the news going on over there. You can check me out on the WrestleZone podcast every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Check me out on the Fightful podcast every Wednesday, and of course on every Smark Out Moment podcast that we do here on this channel. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFelice, and I will see you next week for the greatest tag team match ever on television.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Hopefully you enjoyed this edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast. We'll see you next week for the latest one in the build-up to Ward Survivor Series. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.